Welcome you to the Planning Commission this evening, October 27th, 2020. I would like to start by having a roll call.
Chairman Cox.
Here.
Commissioner Ferris.
Here.
Commissioner Hayman. Here. Commissioner Reed.
Here.
4 present. We have a quorum.
Would you please rise? Commissioner Reed, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I always struggle with this part. Do I say ready, begin, or do I just
No,
start?
just start.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated.
You didn't tell me to take my hat off.
Way to go, dude.
Thanks. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Do I have an approval for the agenda?
I'll make a motion. I will second.
Chairman Cox.
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris.
Aye.
Commissioner Hayman. Aye. Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
4 ayes. Motion carries.
Thank you. We're going to put off the approval of the minutes. The minutes are on your supplemental on the front and back, but did not come in your packet. So this way you can take a look at it, and we'll approve it at our meeting on the 17th. Moving forward, we're going to the public portion of our minutes. Persons wishing to address the Commission on matters that are within the Commission's jurisdiction and do not already appear on the agenda may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the Planning Commission may not take action on an item that does not appear on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. The public comment section of the agenda is limited to a total of 1 hour. Each speaker is asked to provide his or her name. Are there anybody that would like to make public comments on things that are not on the agenda? Seeing that nobody is coming forward, I'd like to close the public comment section at 6:02. Moving on, we would like to open a public hearing, ordinance recommendation to the City Council to amend second units as it applies to accessory dwelling units in the Ridgecrest Municipal Code. Staff report.
California legislature has encouraged accessory dwelling units to meet the housing needs. The new laws address barriers for accessory dwelling units. They streamline the approval process and they expand potential capacity for accessory dwelling units. This ordinance was prepared to meet the minimum standards that are required by California law. So what this ordinance is going to do is it will allow for accessory dwelling units in any residential zone. The only limitations to this are for public safety or inadequate water or sewer. The ordinance establishes the processes for approving accessory dwelling units. It also describes some restrictions, including the prohibition of sale of accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units. And it establishes the development standards for accessory dwelling units. So some of those standards are the maximum floor area, the height, yard requirements, parking.
Maximum size?
Yes. So in general, what the accessory dwelling units that are required for us to approve, we would have no discretionary review and no hearings. So these would all be ministerial review, and we only have a 60-day period to approve them once a completed application has been submitted to planning. It allows it in any residential zone. Right now, so I'm going to ask for a couple of additions to what you guys have in front of you. Right now, the current standard says that we can have no owner occupancy through 2025. If you look at your resolution and your recommendation, which was prepared, it does say under Section 4, General Requirements, number 2, it says either the primary unit or the ADU shall be owner occupied. So I'm just going to ask that you recommend additional language that says that this provision is not required through 2025, because that's currently what the law says. The minimum size is 150 square feet, and that would be something that's established by the Health and Safety Code as an efficiency unit. Lot coverage requirements are still allowed, but density is not. The maximum size can be 800 square feet, and that would receive an automatic approval. And that goes without any consideration for the lot coverage. So there's some things that we were able to include. We have included provisions so that you could not make an accessory dwelling unit in the backyard and then have that be rented for under a 30-day period. So that's in here. There is no parking requirement if it's within a half a mile from a transit stop. If it's outside of a half a mile, then there is a parking requirement, but that can still be tandem parking. There's a lot more too. So like if you convert a garage into a junior accessory dwelling unit, then we can't require additional parking because that's a conversion of parking. Also, right now in our municipal code, we have something that's called second units, and that no longer applies. So I would ask that we would add language in the resolution as well that this ordinance removes the second units, although it is void, but we would still want that cleaned up in our municipal code, that it strikes it out. So staff is going to recommend approval. Also, I should let you know about the process. So for this, as with all of our ordinances, this one comes to you for recommendation. It goes to City Council, which it will have a public hearing and a second reading. Then after that, for this one, the Housing and Community Development Department will review this ordinance. So if they find that we have not met the requirements, then we will have to amend the ordinance. So, and that's after the City Council approval. So any questions?
Is this, what's the Planning Commission's resolution number? 20-what? XX?
Yes. Give me a minute on that one.
What is it? Give me just a minute. Okay. I do have a question. In reading this, just real quickly, there's a section in there that talks about it can have its own meter, water, gas, so on and so forth. But this unit, regardless of metering, has to be on its own, autonomous. It has to have its own water, sewer, gas, everything. In other words, it can't be a living space and go into the primary residence to use the bathroom and shower and stuff like that, right?
That is true, yes.
Okay.
Even the junior accessory dwelling units have to be standalone units. And so that's like if you converted a part of your house. So the junior accessory is an attached structure. And even that has to have an exterior entry.
Okay. Commission, any questions?
I have a couple comments, a couple questions. Can you explain why in section 3 it says such accessory structures shall not be used as a dwelling unit nor have separately metered utilities, but it also states that it can have separately metered utilities in section 4B? Am I reading it wrong? Is section 3 what the code used to say? I would assume that since this is a new ordinance, it wouldn't be, but.
So what this section 3 is stating is there's still something called accessory structures, which are not dwelling units.
Okay.
So this is clarifying that accessory structures, which is like a shed or a detached garage, that still exists, but the accessory dwelling units is separate. So that's going to be like your living quarters. So you wouldn't be able to build a garage and separately meter that.
Gotcha. And then, where's my other note? Oh, we have stuff in here that talks about detached units shall be located behind the rear face of the primary unit. Some lots that I've seen have quite large side yards. Why are we subjecting them to, because I know a lot of the houses that we see that are being built today, the backyard is almost all of the side yard. And I feel like, and they've got patios off to the side yard, or they've got their usable spaces on the side yard. So I'm not sure that I like the language that says detached units shall be located behind the rear face of the primary unit. Because I think there's, under certain circumstances, that the side yard would need to be utilized for this, or could be.
The way I would understand that is you wouldn't want an accessory unit, so you wouldn't want the small structure to be in front of. So whether or not it's side by side, I think is not the intent.
But it specifically calls out the rear face of the primary unit under section 4D1. I don't know about the other commissioners, but the way I read that, I would think of that as the back of the house, as the rear face of the house.
Well, I think the difference is too, as you go through some of the other language. For example, if I had a large side yard and I wanted to extend my house, it became part of the roof line, so on and so forth. And yet it was a casita or a mother-in-law house or whatever it was, it becomes part of the structure. But they're trying to outline, in other words, if you're going to create this one space, that it doesn't detract, because you're talking about putting it in a neighborhood, okay, not detract from the initial dwelling, the primary dwelling. So in other words, you're not going to put a 600 square foot shed and call it a primary and put it right out in front here. And so I think there's a difference between adding on, which they give allowance for. They talk about garage enclosures, which they talk about, which is not obviously in back of the house. So there's leeway in a lot of different ways, but they're talking about a separate structure that would detract from a primary dwelling, because that then affects the neighborhood and the market value of the neighborhood.
Well, and I agree with you that we don't want them to be right up in the front of the house, but I just don't like the rear face word, because the rear face, every time I'm going to think of a rear face, I'm going to think of the very back of the house. That is the rear face. So if we say that, and I think if people take the literal meaning of this, that could be means to deny, when it could be a case-by-case basis. So, and all I'm saying is maybe we put something in there that says the city has some discretion to allow them in the side yard, based off of this set of ideals.
Could they request a variance for something like that?
Well, if I can clarify, so there's something in the law as it's written right now where there are mandatory approvals that exist. So as you're saying, if they have a large side yard, so you can't put it behind the rear face of the house, we cannot not allow it. We cannot prohibit one that is not more than 800 square feet or 16 feet in height and 4 feet from the side or rear yard. So even if it says this, we still wouldn't be allowed to not approve it. It would just have to be under 800 square feet. So there is kind of an overruling provision that exists in the law as it is right now.
And you still have to comply with the setbacks,
A 4-foot setback.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
that was my other question. Why are we alleviating our typical 5-foot
5 foot.
setback and making it a 4-foot setback? Is it ADA related? Do we not have control of that based on this, or?
No.
This is the
This is
state.
exactly the state.
This is the state that's turning around trying to streamline and make it easier to accommodate. So it's some of this language is not something that we have discretion over because the state is mandating, and the attorney has looked at the language and adjusted it for our city as best he can, but it's very, very limited on what he can do.
Yeah, because I was just thinking about our carport issue, and I feel like this opens the door for a lot of complaints and more people in here arguing about the carport issue.
Well, we need to bring that back too.
So, and then I have one other thing that I've been thinking about a lot with this is, I think we need to have some language in this that basically says you can't create additional frontage to your property. And the reason why I say that is, in my time in doing work with some of the older tracts and even some of the newer tracts, like the tract that I'm in, there's no language in the tract, and just per perspective. My house backs up to Norma, my frontage is on a cul-de-sac. There's no language in the tract map that prevents me from not taking access from Norma. So I don't want to see people thinking, oh, I can make these accessory dwelling units and then put access in from my backyard off of a major street or something like that. So I think having some language in there, if we don't want to allow them to have new frontage onto another street, there needs to be something in there to hold that back.
That's reasonable.
Yeah. That makes sense. From another street or even from an alley.
An alley,
Right.
same thing, exactly.
So, Travis, you want to put that in as a addition to the resolution?
Honestly, I'm not, since I'm relatively new to this, I don't know what is the best way to do that. So I will take your recommendation on that.
That's what we'll do, is we'll make that as a recommendation, and then the attorney will look at it, make sure that we can do that before it's signed. But that's the recommendation, because what we're doing is we're making a recommendation to the city council. So any additions that we want to do then will be provided in a staff report to the city council so that they can digest the same information. And that way the attorney has a chance to look at it. And then, because once it gets approved by the city council, then it goes back to the state. And if they don't like what we've done, then it'll come back. So there's nothing wrong with putting this in there and seeing how it floats. And I think that's a good idea. Commissioners,
I agree.
any other ideas?
The only other one that I
Okay,
have-
Travis, where were you reading on that, on the street access? What number?
I actually didn't read anything on it. It was just something that I thought of as I was reading this and thinking about what.
Okay, Heather, you're going to have to find a spot for street access.
And then the last other little thing I have is, do we really think it's necessary to have an ADU is located within 1/2 mile of public transit? Because who is going to enforce that?
There's a lot of things in there that we ask the same question, but that's what they require.
So
Once again, that's a state requirement, and that's not something that we can alter, because the state is pro-mass transit and the access to.
Gotcha. So is that is a state requirement?
The state requirement is we can't require parking if they're within a 1/2 mile. So we could, if the commission chose, we could not require parking at all. So this is the stricter version by saying you're not required to have parking if you're within a 1/2 mile.
Yeah, and we don't want to loosen that up, because we don't want to have the ability to rent a facility and then have 6 cars at a single home in a neighborhood, and that creates other problems.
Makes sense.
So keep that tight. Anything else, Commissioner?
That's it for me.
Commissioners? I'll open this up to the public. Is there any comment from the public? Mr. Morgan?
Commissioner Cox, Planning Commissioners, this is going to be a little discombobulated, I'm sorry, because I've just been trying to digest this whole thing. So first of all, this is a watering down of R1 by state mandate.
Well, of any of the, whether it's an R1, R2, any of them, because you could live in an R2 as your primary, and then if you, so, yeah, that's the discussion that we had. The state is mandating to the city to amend its, zoning.
Okay. Can you explain one more time for me? I think
Commissioner Reed?
Commissioner Reed, I think he addressed this, but front yard setback, okay? And in this paperwork, it states that,
Are you talking in the information or in the Planning Commission's resolution?
in the information.
Okay. What page?
That's exactly what I'm trying to find.
I mean, it's only like 300 pages.
Yeah.
You'll find-
Page 12 of the setbacks, under setbacks in the information, D setbacks at the bottom, just before item E.
Local agency may still apply front yard setbacks for ADUs.
But front yard setbacks cannot preclude a statewide exemption ADU. What is that? Does that mean if I have a large enough front yard, I can put an 800-foot unit in the front yard of my house legally in an R1?
No, I don't think so, because the reality is the setbacks are, I guess somebody could probably complain, but that'd be a good question for the attorney.
Okay.
Only from the standpoint, you cannot preclude a statewide exemption. They could ask for an exemption, but on the same token, we're not going to let them build in the 10-foot setback, which is a public utility. And then we have an additional 20 setback, and that's a public safety thing. And so consequently, I don't think the ADU is going to turn around and try to mandate that, because they talk about, just as Commissioner Reed talked about, well, you can have this unit, but it has to be, at the back of the house. So they're not really talking about trying to put it in the front yard, but that's also an access and a parking too. So there's a number of arguments that could be made there, but I don't think that they could push or mandate that.
I would
Heather?
certainly like to get an attorney opinion on that. I would appreciate that.
That's a good point.
Also, on that same page, on F, in bedrooms, because I think it's contradictory, so I'm not clear. State ADU law does not allow for the limitation on the number of bedrooms. Yet, in another section, they talk about you can only have 2 bedrooms. So which is it? So I have a question there that I think needs to be looked into. I think the sprinkler system on page 16, this is more of a process question, but okay, so if an old house doesn't have sprinklers, the new ADU doesn't require it.
Right.
If the old house gets a remodel, what I don't understand is, does that automatically require that the ADU now has to have sprinklers as well, or do you have to do an upgrade on the ADU to make them do sprinklers? It's not clear to me. But I know it is clear to me that if you do a reconfiguration of your house, if you do an upgrade, you have to put a sprinkler system in. That's current code in the state. So what I'm curious about is, if an older home does a complete remodel interior, just destroys the inside, and the ADU does not have sprinklers, in their upgrade, do they now have to put in sprinklers? I've read this thing back and forth, and I can't find whether that's true or not true. And that would need to be, the staff would need to be telling folks that if they came up and said, hey, I want to do a remodel of my house, and they have an ADU that we would know about, and what's the answer?
So if I may, it says that on that same page, page 16, towards the end of that paragraph, it says, if the same primary dwelling recently undergoes significant remodeling and is now required to have fire sprinklers, any ADU created after the remodel must likewise install fire sprinklers. So if there's already an ADU in there, then they don't have to.
Okay. Have we reached out yet to Heritage and Santiago and told them that their restrictions are no longer valid? Just out of curiosity. Because they are no longer, if they
Well,
have,
no
if they have
place in the city is.
if they have CC&Rs in there that say they can't do something, this says that's not valid anymore. And we should be telling them. I mean, I'm just saying, when I read this, I'm like, oh, and they're not going to be happy with that. But they don't have a choice.
Well, I read it too, Steve, but I interpret it a little bit differently in the aspect that, in fact, the comment that I made to staff is that you're going to find developers either in a closed development or they're creating CC&Rs that prohibit. And under a planned unit development or something else, I don't think the state can mandate private CC&Rs. And so I don't think that they can come in and alter a community other than in a standard environment.
I would think to add to that too, that I think a homeowners association would have a lot more to override this than CC&Rs, just to go along with that.
It's just that I think it's made mostly, Mr. Morgan, it's made for the city that the city can't deny it under these conditions, should somebody want to apply. I think people that go into a PUD or that have the CC&Rs or a gated community are doing that for a particular environment, and they're less likely to say, I'm going to mess with this or try to mess with this. Now, all things being created equal, there's always that one person. But I think under the provisions of the CC&Rs or a homeowners association, I don't think that they can countermand it.
Page 18 of the first document,
Right?
number 6, homeowners association. Can my local homeowners association prohibit the construction of an ADU? First word is no. And I just think that we should be reaching out to these folks and letting them know what's coming. There's nothing we can do about it, but if we have not reached out to them, we need to let them know.
Well, and that's the purpose of a public meeting too, is to advertise that this is coming. So,
I'm sorry. Drainage. I'm a little confused about drainage. So we have an R1 12,000-foot lot that has a 2,500 square foot house on it, and we have provisions that they must either hold the water on their property or they must have somewhere, the developer must have somewhere where he can put it. So now we're going to take another 1,000 foot, 1,200 foot of impermeable surface on that property. Are we just going to ignore the drainage requirement? It doesn't say anything in here.
So I would say that the coverage is the consideration when the map is done. So at any point, you could cover a portion of your lot by the municipal code. So that's got to be included when we originally map. So I don't think this would be any different than the original.
Okay. Are we considering, because of this ordinance for these units, Are we considering making them air conditioning only, no swamp cooling? Due to our water constraints? Just curious. And also, it says in here that the local agencies that work with water and sewer should be talked to. The water district saw this. Is that correct? Because I haven't heard that.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
And Steve, to your point, in talking to the water district or to the sewer, to what point? Okay, because it's not a case that we need to ask their permission because the state is mandating it. So I'm not sure what it is that you're trying to achieve in some of this, because it's not something that, it can be a courtesy, but the water district can't say, oh, well, we're not going to allow a second hookup if they want to do a second meter. They could use the same meter and just rent it out with utilities paid and run off the same meter if the meter was capable of handling it. So I'm trying to figure out, you're asking questions and wanting things from staff, but in some point we're kind of stuck.
Yes, sir. And
So-
I mean, no disrespect to this panel, or
Sure.
the commission or to the staff. I'm just reading the words in the document. And the words in that first preliminary document state that the purveyors of sewer and water need to be they need to have information about what this law is doing. And I was curious whether we had done it or not.
So my suggestion is instead of necessarily concentrating on the information that was provided by the state, look at the resolution that's going to the city council or recommendation of the city council and the one from the planning commission, because that is what's modifying our ordinance. This is information strictly from the state that the attorney has digested and said, here's how we're going to amend our code. And so to go through their information and say, why didn't they this or why didn't they that, that's just the recommendations in the council from the state. What we have are the resolutions that are saying this is what our code is now going to be. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. And again, I mean no disrespect. It's just questions that are
No,
going to
no,
come
and
up later.
I didn't take it at that. So normally this is about 5 minutes. Do you have other questions?
Yes. What is a mechanical automobile parking lift? In the council resolution, near the back of this documentation, ordinance number blank, an ordinance of the city council, the city of Ridgecrest, adding portions to the Ridgecrest Municipal Code regarding accessory dwelling units. Near the bottom of page 3, the conversion of, it should be an ADU, shall comply with the following development standards. When an existing garage is converted into an ADU, the replacement parking spaces for the primary dwelling unit are not required to be covered. Replacement spaces may be uncovered, and then it says mechanical automobile parking lifts. Now, that's not anywhere in what the state is requiring. Why are we putting that in? What is that? Are we going to let somebody have a lift in their front yard so they can double park, they can park one vehicle under the other? I don't understand what that is. So I would like that looked into.
I just searched that on the internet just to get an idea of what it was, and that is exactly what it is. It is like a lift that you would see at an automotive shop.
So we don't, that's not in the state requirement. I think that should be eliminated. That's all. I believe you should discuss having that very statement eliminated.
Or maybe require it to be
And I
inside
apologize
walls.
for taking all this time. I'm done.
No, you're fine.
I would say my recommendation would be to make sure that it was encompassed within a garage or indoors or behind a fence or.
Well, you can't do that. The state says you can't. So in other words, if you close the garage, you can move your cars outside. They don't necessarily have to be covered, but you can move them outside. So to turn around and say, well, they need to be covered or something, then we're talking about carports that are now in the easement, because now we only have the 30-foot setback. So they're giving up their garage and it's just going to be in the open. But I agree with Steve. So the recommendation I would suggest, I think Mr. Morgan has it correct there, because as you read on, it talks about parking lifts or tandem spaces on the existing driveway. So we're not Japan and have parking garage lifts, but I don't think that would be beneficial in our communities. And so even in our recommendation resolution, Heather, I think that's a good catch, Mr. Morgan, and I appreciate that. And I think that would be appropriate to recommend to the council to take out. Mr. Morgan, did you have a chance to look at the Planning Commission's resolution and have any additions to what we've already put in there?
I did not, sir.
Okay. Any other public comment? Commissioners? Okay. So I would move that we approve the resolution recommending to the City Council 2020 with the amendments that we have. We have, isn't there an amendment in Section 4 that you have, Travis, that you recommended to Heather? Because that's where I put it.
Yeah,
And then the amendment that's not in there is the street access, that we don't extend additional accesses to a piece of property, or don't allow front and rear accesses or side yard accesses if they're on a quarter lot, that it's a front yard access only. And
I think that was it. And then whatever ones we
remove
needed.
second unit was a note that I put, Travis.
Yep.
Okay.
And then in the section that says no owner or required owner occupancy, I would like to include that there is no owner occupancy requirement until 2025. So we have 4.
Okay. That's my recommendation. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Chairman Cox?
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris?
Aye.
Commissioner Hayman? Aye. Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
4 ayes, motion carries.
Sorry, real quick, before we get off this subject, did we have something about the lift? Did we remember
Yes.
the lift? Okay.
Yes.
Figured it was.
Yeah, that was the recommendation that we take that out.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we
And,
included it.
recommend the council remove that.
Okay. And I just wanted to make sure we included it, because we were talking about everything else and I didn't hear it.
Well, it wasn't in our resolution, but that was the recommendation to take that out. And so they'll either automatically take it out or they'll recommend that the council take it out. And since we have council member here, she'll remember it. Mr. Morgan, thank you so very much. We appreciate that. Moving on, I want to close this public hearing and move on. We have a discussion and other action items, discussion the tentative tract map, 7320, consideration of a 12-month extension for the tract subdivision 26.92 acre parcel of an E2 zone, land in 75 single-family lots and 1 sump lot. The project is located in the southeast corner of West Kendall Avenue and South Norma Street. It is bound on the east side by Reedy Street and connected to South Bowman Street. Single-family unit ranges in size from 10,000 square foot to 13,650 square foot. It is requested to build a phased project, APN 510-020-02. Staff report.
So this map is located up in the College Heights neighborhoods. It's 26.92 acres. It is infill at this point. This This is for a 12-month extension to the map. It's already been granted one extension previously. This is E2 zoned property. There are 75 lots, and there is a sump on this one. Staff would recommend an additional 12-month extension. If you approve this, they would have one more extension after this. Questions?
Is this a sump or a pocket park? Because we were doing pocket parks up there.
Then it may be a sump park.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, any questions?
Come on, Bill, ask your famous question.
I already know the answer.
And the answer is? Okay, Commissioners, if you don't have any questions, I would recommend approval of the extension. It is Planning Commission Resolution 20 what?
19?
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Chairman Cox?
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris?
Aye.
Commissioner Hayman? Aye. Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
4 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you. The next item is tentative track map 6700, consideration of a 12-month extension for amended 2 tentative track maps located at on 20.89 acre parcel APN 510-010-17. Staff report.
So this map was previously graded, as you can see. This was one that we amended previously as well. In that amendment, we removed the landscaping scenic road easement along there so that it matched up with the grading and didn't create the substandard lots. So this is again in College Heights. It's 20 acres. This one was given a 12, oh, no, this one had no extensions because we amended it. So this would be the first extension for this one. It is 54 single-family units, and it does have a sump.
Okay, so not everybody was on the commission at the time that we did this, and it was probably just Solomon and I. So I want to give a little background history. As you look at this map that's on the screen, the lots facing the street on the right-hand side, okay? One of the things that was done by one of the planners was to decide to offset the street by an additional 10 feet for additional landscaping. Under the water restriction that we have, that made all of those lots substandard size. And by being substandard size, then each one of them would have had to have a variance or a conditional use or something that would allow them to build on a substandard lot. So we chose not to have substandard lots and to push that easement back to where it was normally, and that way we didn't have exceptions or conditions that would affect the building of those lots. So that was the reasoning why we pushed that back and approved it. So I would recommend that we approve, and I assume this is Resolution 2018.
No,
What is it? The last
2020.
one? 21. Okay, so we went from 20 to 19 now to 21. Okay. Okay. Approve this extension. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Chairman Cox?
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris?
Aye.
Commissioner Hayman?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
4 ayes, motion carries.
Okay, moving on, tentative track map 6731, a request for a time extension of tentative track map 6731, a request to create a 122-lot residential subdivision with a estate density of E2 zoning. It is APN-510, -010-06 and 07. Staff report.
So this map is, again, in College Heights. This one is much larger. This is the third extension on this one. So if approved tonight, it would be the last extension. This one has 122 single-family lots. There is a lot of improvements that would be required for this map. So I don't know if we would have movement on that. But it is the last extension. It's E2 zoned. Staff recommends an extension.
Commissioners?
Where is legal access to this property?
Back it up. One picture. Right
Is that,
there.
oh, Norma, I couldn't see Norma, thank you. I was trying to figure out what that street was.
Yeah,
And
and
this
that's why I said there's a lot of public improvements that would be required to develop this. So it has been problematic. There's a lot you're going to have to fill in order to get to the map.
Yeah, it's still off of the project that they just finished. But, yeah, this is the last extension. Commissioner, any questions on it? Anything from the public? I would move that we approve the resolution
22?
2022
Right.
and approve the extension of this for 12 months. Now, we have notified them that this is their last extension?
Yes, I have been in contact with them.
All right, thank you.
I'll second.
Chairman Cox?
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris?
Aye.
Commissioner Hayman?
Aye.
Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
4 ayes, motion carries.
Okay, in the latter part of this, commissioner items and comments. Do we have any commissioner comments? No? Anything from the public? Any staff items?
So we do have a new code enforcement officer, and we will be having a special planning commission meeting, at which point we'll hear a couple of abatements. So that's going to be November 17th, and it will be at 5 p.m., not 6.
Let me put this in my,
On the 17th, right?
Yep.
let me put this in my calendar now, so.
So you can still be going.
Hey.
Okay, what about committee reports? Travis?
We've been meeting with the Parks and Rec Committee. We're, as you guys all, I'm sure, are aware, we're trying to get a grant for for a pool. We've had, I think 4 meetings now. Our last meeting was had quite a decent amount of attendance. We held it at the Kerr-McGee Fields, at which time the staff had prepared boards for kids, parents, soccer, baseball, all of them to put stickers. So we were COVID compliant on what kind of improvements and what kind of extracurricular items they would like to see around the pool. Obviously, no decision has been made exactly as to what the layout's going to be just yet. We don't have a final location yet. That's all still in the works, but we do have a general idea of what other people in the community would like to see. There's multiple partnerships with it. The hospital is one, and I'm going to forget numerous of them, so I apologize now. The hospital is one. The school district is one.
And the proposed grant, the cost of the Aqua Center?
The proposed grant is, I want to say it's like 8.2 million
That's what I thought.
is what the proposed grant is. And Narissa's probably going to kill me when she hears me misquoting.
So
some
I'm
of that stuff.
assuming it's more than a pool, especially if the hospital is getting involved. It's going to be a therapeutic as well.
Yeah, we're trying to do, it's basically going to be a full aquatic center. I believe the intention right now is to have it be an indoor, so it can be a year-round aquatic center. The two sites that are currently being considered, and I'm not saying that this is everything on it, are Freedom Park, which I think we actually ex-nayed because to get your points for the grant, there's the one that's Elmer's Park that's undeveloped is a better and more suitable location for it, but that's all still being debated right now.
Okay. Any other committee? What about infrastructure?
Yeah, we've done multiple things with Infrastructure Committee. We've been reviewing the landscape and lighting district things. There's still going back and forth. Staff is doing research on what other places do right now. We're still trying to come up with a way to have, gosh, why am I drawing a blank on everything? You put me on the spot tonight.
Well, we asked for them to look in. We had, there was a report that was done on impact fees that was done in 2009. And we feel like that needs to be readdressed and looked at because it's 11 years. And we've asked them to relook at that as far as the impact fees and the allocation of the impact fees, because we have to comply by the report. And we're looking at other options that are there. So that's the only other item that I remember.
I would agree with you. I'm sure there's more that we're forgetting, but.
How about the two of you? Any committee reports?
Might have not met since our last meeting, so nothing new to report.
And I'm
Vanessa?
just Parks and Rec too.
Okay.
Did I miss anything?
No, you got everything.
Okay, staff, anything else for us? Happy holidays.
Yes, I would mention at this time that we will not have our regular meetings in November and December. Obviously, cancellation notices will go out, but we will not have those regular meetings unless you guys want to come in
So
at
just a
Thanksgiving.
special one on the 17th.
At this point, yes. If we
Okay.
need to have a special one in December, then please just keep
We
checking your
can do that.
emails. But the regular scheduled ones, I'll be canceling.
Okay, so one other question on the 17th. Are we going to do, obviously, we're going to have an election between now and then. And so the commissioners are asked to serve until the first of the year. Okay, and that allows new council members to appoint their commissioners, and then we do a swearing in after the first of the year, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure, with an election, I don't want you to think, well, my person didn't get reelected. We want to have a continuity, and even though we're not planning a commission meeting in December, let's stay as a commission until the first of the year. Okay? All right. If nothing else, then I will call this meeting adjourned at 6:53. Thank you for coming, everybody.